Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. This is your friendly neighborhood Oxhorn, and I'm here in Vault 88 to do a highly anticipated and much requested video on how to properly light your vault. Lighting is a tricky issue in Vault 88, so I'm going to go through the way that I light my vault, and hopefully you'll be able to get something from it. Let's start with this entryway. I'll go through the entire vault, but let's start with the entryway because this is the one that's been requested more often than everything. And the reason that the entryway is tricky is because the entryway doesn't give you the ability to snap a power conduit anywhere. So let's go to switches. This vault power conduit is the new magical power thing. Yep, and I can't snap it. In Vault-Tec Workshop, that makes everything easier. And I'll show you how it works. You can see that I'm trying to snap it to the walls and nothing is snapping. You have to go all the way out to the vault that you're building before you can snap it anywhere. There, and now it snaps. And the reason this is important is because it basically acts as lighting Wi-Fi. If you snap it to a wall that has connected power, it's going to radiate power throughout your entire vault that your lights can pick up. So I'm going to go way over here and place it here, and the light doesn't turn on because I'm too far away from the power conduit. But if I pick it up and bring it back closer, check it out. It turns on, right? So that's how that works. Now, I show that off only to demonstrate how it works. The reason that lighting the front of your vault is frustrating is because those power conduits don't snap to any of the walls up here. So you got to find some other way to go about it. Now, as you can see, I have quite a defense structure set up at the beginning of my vault. I've got scaffolding over here and an assortment of powered turrets. And the way I had to do it was through ugly, ugly wires. Wires are quicker than the conduit pipes, and what I ended up doing is just wiring it through the ceiling using these new white conduits that came with Vault-Tec Workshop. I tried to wire it over there, and I am using the Place Anywhere mod to get this to work. The Place Anywhere mod allows you to pass your wires through structures like this. If I wasn't using that mod, then I wouldn't be able to do that, and I'd basically have wires coming down the middle of my vault. But it wires all the way down here, and this is the reactor room. This is the power reactor that comes with Vault 88. You really don't need to make any more power reactors if you don't want to. So let's talk about a new way to get power through here. Let's say you don't want to use these wires. What you could do instead is you could build some piped conduits that came with Wasteland Workshop. So here's the conduit build tree. And there are a number of great options. And the one that I want to use is the wall pass-through conduit, right? Because this way... Oh man, it's not making it easy. Let's see. Yeah, and the wall's too thick. Oh, darn, that's not going to work. Well, I was hoping the wall would have been thinner. Here I was planning on doing this really cool trick where I could go through the wall because these wall pass-through conduits can actually go through walls. But this wall is just too thick. It's such a thick wall that you can't go through it. I suppose you could try going through the door. But then this would be built right on top of the steps. Yeah. Well, it works. So you could do it that way, and then you could just wire it through there like that. But then you'd have this big knob sticking out of your door. Anyway, so whether you use conduits or not is kind of a moot point. The frustrating thing is that you are going to have to use wires. The powered conduits that came with Vault-Tec Workshop don't work at the beginning of the vault, so you're going to have to use wires one way or another. Now let me show you a trick for how I got this to work using the Place Anywhere mod. What I did is I went and I placed one of the new ceiling mounted power conduits in the air like that. Then I wired it up, and basically I built the wiring that I wanted in the air first. That way I got the power all the way to my turrets up there. Once I got the power wired, I then went ahead and made it all pretty by hiding these conduits in different places. Once you get it wired, you could snake this up there. And the reason this works is because the game goes based on how close the conduits were to each other when you first placed them, and not based upon where you place them. So you can get the power flowing and then move them kind of out of the way so that they're hidden. Again, you do need a mod for that, but that's one way to go about it. If you don't have mods, you can get it to work, but it's just going to be a little bit more ugly with wires everywhere. Alright, next up, let's talk about individual rooms. So this is a laundry room that I built for my settlement, and I am using the new fluorescent lights that came with Vault-Tec Workshop. Now, the lights in Vault-Tec Workshop are a bit of a disappointment. They don't have a very large radius, and they've got this sort of soft, clinical glow that's actually kind of ugly. So what I do for my rooms, unless I really want it to have this sort of clinical feel, is I put these fluorescent lights just to kind of get all the corners, and then in the middle of the room, I place these light bulbs to kind of push out a little bit more brilliance. So I'll do one live for you. Here I am in the nursery, and notice that light is kind of trickling down into it. So let me turn off my lamp, and you see, even though I haven't built any lights, you can see that light is trickling down into it. And that's because Vault 88 has these light nodes, these light sources in various places. These are especially prevalent on the walls, and the light from those little nodes kind of pass through all of your structures, which is frustrating if you want a really dark room, because you can't scrap that light source, you can't get rid of that light source, you just won't be able to have a really dark room there. You're going to have to move the room. But for most of our rooms, it's not going to be an issue because most of us want to actually light our rooms well. So let me show you a few things that I do to light my rooms. Now, if you look at the ceiling, I pointed this out in a different video, but you'll notice that some of these ceiling tiles have these hatches. Well, you can't place lights there. I mean, you can, the game allows you to do it, but if you think about logic, you would never place a light on a hatch that you can close and open. So in my builds, I only place the ceiling mounted fluorescent lights in the rectangles and squares that are free. So there are a few here. So in this build, let's go on over to our square fluorescent light. And there are a number of different fluorescent lights that you can use. This is one of my favorites for these perfectly square patches. And here, I have a mod that turns off surface snapping. Let me turn it on. So most of you are going to experience this. The light works, but you see how the light is floating? That really bothers me. Now, one reader left a comment when I complained about this in another video and said, the floating fluorescent lights don't bother me because it could be that maybe the fluorescent light is hanging from the ceiling by a cable or a wire and you just can't see those wires. And that makes sense. If you want to rationalize it that way, then that's fine. But for my build, I don't like the fact that it looks like it's floating or hovering against the wall. So what I do is I use the Place Anywhere mod, and while in workshop mode, I press F2 to turn off surface snap. Did you see that in the left-hand corner? I'm going to turn it on again. Surface snap is on. Top left-hand corner, I'm going to turn it off by pressing F2. Surface snap is off. That allows me to kind of push the light up flush against the wall. And you see how the blue line kind of goes into it? You can use that as a guide so that you don't push it too deeply into the wall. I just want it to touch the ceiling ever so much. And there you go. Now it doesn't look like it's floating, and that makes me really happy. Now the problem is that for some reason with these vault rooms, if you do push a light up into the ceiling, the game suddenly considers the light to be only accessible from the ceiling. So to scrap it, I would have to remove the actual structure of the room and move it around. So when you do place it using this method, make sure that you get it right the first time. All right, let's do this a few more times because there are a few more squares. And I just want the blue to touch. Bingo. Bring it in with the scroll bar. And then just barely. And then looks like I've got room for one more. Okay. Now, that definitely helps, but you still see that we've got these little bits of darkness, and normally the walls would be very dark because the radius is poor for these ceiling-mounted fluorescent squares. But because light is bleeding through from the other parts of the vault, the walls of this little nursery actually look pretty good. But if you would like to use some wall-mounted lights, Vault-Tec Workshop does come with some that are nice. You get two options. You get these long fluorescent wall-mounted lights and these short fluorescent wall-mounted lights, and they're really finicky. You want to push them up as high as you can, but as you can see, they just start to slide right through the building, and it wants to snap, and it helps if you turn off surface snap, but it's just really kind of finicky. So I'm going to line this up in the center of this wall, and I'm going to go as far as I can. There we go, and that looks pretty good. Now I can't line this one up because this wall is shorter. You see how I can't go quite as far up without it snapping into the wall? So I'm going to put that there, and then let's move this down a little bit so that it matches. There we go. And so then one short one over here. There we go. And it's lit up pretty well. But it still has this sort of whitish, bluish, clinical feel to it. So for a room of this size, this is a pretty small room, I'll try and make the color in this room pop a little bit by placing at least one standard bulb. And this one may require two, so let's bring it in. Let's look for that X on the floor, which aligns well. Now watch the colors as I place this. Watch the color of the wallpaper. See how it changes? Now. You see that? It's got a much warmer look to it. Look at that side of the room compared to this side. I realize it's subtle, but I think it looks a lot better. And I'm pushing it up just enough until it clips. Bingo. And that is how I light rooms in my vault. All right, let's talk about this, the atrium ceiling. You're going to have an atrium ceiling very similar to mine. Now, it'll be similar regardless of whether you use the prefabs or not. So you probably already know that there are some atrium prefabs that give you this sort of concave roof that follows the contours of the rock wall. I chose to not do that with my vault. I wanted as lofty a ceiling as I possibly could, but the principle I'm going to show you is going to apply regardless. As you can see, my roof is just dark and dim and dingy. I need to light this up bad, and the way we're going to do this is we're going to climb on top of the roof and power it through the other side. Here I am on the roof of my atrium, and as you can see, yes, I too suffer from the bug where my settlers get teleported to the roof of my structures. Nothing I can do about it. By the way, these are the lights that I was talking about earlier. Remember I said that there were some lights in the vault that you can't scrap and can't get rid of? These are some of the ones on the ceiling. They're a permanent light source, and so you're kind of always going to have these little pops of light around your vault that seep through the walls. Anyway, here I am at the very top, and as you can see, I've got this sort of secret room up here. Now, I haven't placed the supports yet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to fully support this so that it does not look like it's hovering. It won't look like it's hovering in the finished build. But what you can do is you can take advantage of this connected building up here by placing your powered conduits on the inside. Here we are on the inside, and this is connected to a power source. So let's go to connectors and switches, go all the way over to Vault Power Conduit. And bingo, it snaps to the wall perfectly. This is going to emit a big sphere, a big 360-degree invisible power sphere that's going to touch the roof that's below us. See the roof below us? So if you put these along the walls inside your secret chamber that's above the ceiling, you'll be able to place your lights on the inside. And just to make sure that it works, let's test it with one of these. So, when you place a ceiling light on the atrium ceiling, if it's close to this conduit, it's going to turn on. But let's say that you don't have a big secret chamber above your atrium ceiling. Well, you're going to have to find a way to power the ceiling so that you can place your lights. Now, I have built this interesting chamber to act as an elevator shaft. And in so creating this chamber, I managed to put a bunch of walls around it that are connected to a power source. So what I can do is I can tap into that power source by placing a vault power conduit right on one of my elevator shaft walls. Now for you, what you may need to do if you don't have an elevator shaft is you may need to find a way to build a wall that reaches outside of your atrium so that the power comes outside your atrium. Here, you see that? I know it's hard to see, but you see how I've got that power conduit? That is powering the bottom of my elevator, and I did that by building a regular wall on the outside of my atrium so that I could snap the conduit to it, and then the power is still flowing through it through the floors. That way I can weave my power through here. And we're going to use the same principle. Oh great, now I've got 3 of them up here. So we're going to use the same principle here. So we've got the power coming through there, and now we just need to wire up the ceiling. The power conduit is not going to snap to the ceiling, so we have to wire it the old school way. So let's go to the new white power conduits. Let's place that there. And then we can place this wherever we want. There you go. And then it's just a little bit of legwork. Place the conduit near to the one that you want, and then move it out until you can't move it any farther. Now, because I have the mod installed that allows me to build anywhere, I could conceivably stretch this one power conduit all the way to the end of the ceiling and the wire would work. But you don't want to do that in this case because watch, as I stretch this out, watch the black wire. It gets lower and lower and lower, and then it starts to clip through the roof. So as I continue to stretch this, the wire is actually going to poke through the ceiling. So for this, I actually have to be really conservative. I've got to make the wires shorter than they would be even if I were to not use mods. Alternatively, you could try wiring across this rusted metal I-beam, because the 360-degree invisible power sphere that is generated by these conduits is going to extend from the girder all the way through the ceiling. So if you don't want to, you don't have to wire it across the ceiling. You could wire it across these girders if you prefer to do it that way. So I'm going to go ahead and wire this up, and then we'll go ahead and add the lights together. By the way, you want to see something evil? They're okay. Alright, so here's a look at what the wiring looks like done. As you can see, I decided to wire in a grid, and for the most part, I skipped a tile. So I went down that line, skipped that line, went down that line. Well, it looks like I wasn't perfect. I did a couple lines there. Skipped that line, went down that line, skipped that line, and I think I've got pretty good coverage of this entire ceiling. That, combined with the radiant energy being generated by the walls of my secret chamber up there, means that this should provide power to every square inch of the ceiling. But there's only one way to find out. Alright, so here I am at the top floor of my atrium. I have a 5-story atrium, and we're going to start at the top floor and then work our way towards the middle. Now, if you are not running mods, then you may need to actually build some scaffolding using the scaffolding tile set that comes with Contraptions Workshop. That's probably the only way you're going to be able to reach the ceiling to wire it up. But if you are using the Place Anywhere mod, then you can simply grab a floor, push it up into the air, jump on top of it, and then climb your way up that way. Anyway, so let's open up our workshop and find a light. So looking at these ceiling tiles, the first thing that jumps to mind is the square fluorescent light that came with the tile set, this one. But personally, I don't know if I really want to do that. So let's actually turn snapping on. There. So that's what that looks like. Now, as you can see, the wiring that we did worked. We've got area of effect coverage. And the ceiling is so far away from the floor that unless you're right up in it, you're not going to be able to tell that it's floating. Actually, that one doesn't look like it is floating. Huh, maybe on the ceiling they don't float. But, you know, I don't know if I want to use the square tiles, so let's try something else. I like this skinny, tiny one as well, the pill-shaped one. Let's see how that works. Let's compare the light. Alright, it emits nearly as much light. The light that's going to come from these is not going to reach all the way to the ground. It touches the ground here because the floor is so close to the ceiling, since I'm on the top floor. But really, the entire point of this exercise is to light up the roof so that the roof doesn't feel like it's dark and empty. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to use these pill-shaped ones. I think those are going to look better. So let's try that. Once you decide upon a direction that you want your lights to face, be consistent with it. Otherwise, it's going to look horrible. You don't want some lights positioned horizontally while others are positioned vertically. Also, I am going to have to put one of these on every single ceiling tile because even if I skip one, there's going to be a bit of dark. See, look, I skipped this one and there's still a lot of dark there and I don't want that. So I am going to have to hit every single one. And because these don't snap, you just kind of got to eyeball it. There's no perfect science here. Just feel it out. And hope you don't fall. I remember watching the extra features DVD on the Lord of the Rings trilogy back in the day, and I remember watching the Foley artists record all of the sound effects for the movie. They had to record all of the leather sound effects and all of the swords clashing and the horse hooves and all of that. And so they would sit down and finish one and they'd go, all right, well, we're making progress. Chip away, chip, 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 chip away. And that's what you got to do here. Yeah, there are 100 different ceiling tiles, but you know what? After you finish one, there are only 99 ceiling tiles. And after you finish 20, there are only 80 ceiling tiles. And if you just chip away, you will eventually get it done. Okay, so we've finished with the ceiling, and now we've got these dark corners on the walls, and we can't place lights there because there are hatches there, and that wouldn't make sense. So we're gonna have to use the hanging lights, and I'll turn off my spotlight so you can see. The lights work great. I mean, look at that. The entire ceiling is lit up, but we really got to take care of these edges. So let's use the hanging fluorescent lights, and hopefully they're not going to sink into the wall like they did in the vault rooms. And I have high hopes because at least the corners are not concave here. So let's try that. You can't go too far. Alright, so what does that do? That casts light down the side of the wall about 1.5 tiles. And it leaves a little darkness there in the corner, but you know what? I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. Looking good, ladies and gentlemen. Alright, so now we have these overhangs. So we need to put lights underneath these balconies. Alright, let's work on that next. Alright, I want to show off a couple different options. This is what it looks like when you have the wall-mounted light. It snaps to the wall. You have this nice halo on the ceiling, so you do get to have the underneath of the walkway lit. It lights the entire wall and the floor. Now here is the Wasteland Workshop spotlight, and it has a similar effect, but it is different. So because it's a spotlight, it has this cascade on the ceiling, but it's got a sharper edge. It's not a circle, and it gets almost the entire wall, and then there's also a very distinct circle on the ground. Between these two, I think I like this one best. Now for comparison, this is what the Wasteland Workshop ceiling light looks like. And look at the difference. Look how wide that radius is compared to this one. Well, actually it's kind of similar, isn't it? I think this one is a little wider and a little bit brighter, and this one fades off a little bit more. So they're all good options. It just depends upon what you want. And then this, of course, is the light bulb, and look at that. The light bulb just makes it look like natural light. It just fills the entire section. But since we have an underground vault, I don't think I want a bunch of hanging light bulbs, so I think I'll go with the wall-mounted fluorescent light. Now here's two options to consider. These wall-mounted ceiling lights look great under an overhang. But when you don't have an overhang, when you have these big vaulted tall ceilings, these big vaulted tall walls, they kind of look weird. Like, could you imagine me going all the way around here with these hanging lights? It would work, but they kind of look weird. So over here I experimented with the subway light. I believe this comes from Wasteland Workshop, and it's just, a fluorescent subway light attached to a wall, and it has a very different effect. This one has sort of a circular down light, and this one has a perfect circle radius. This one also appears to be a little brighter, whereas this one has a more bluish green and fainter light. So I'm just showing the two off so that you can see the differences in case you want to experiment. I think I'm actually going to go with the subway light. I kind of like the way this is looking. So let me build out the rest of this and we'll see how it looks. Looking good, looking good. Not quite there yet, but check that out. Looking pretty good. It's pretty harsh, so I need to find a way to extend some light out here. See, the main problem is that the lights on the ceiling don't go very far down, so honestly I'll probably have to put some lamps out here. So I'll do better wiring later, but what I'm rigging up for, since I have such a huge spot, is I'm using these Wasteland Workshop street lights, and I'm choosing this one specifically because the light is going to cast down in a 360-degree radius around this thing, so that I don't have to position it a certain way. Also, this is the only one that isn't glitched. So what I'll do is, you see how the darkness grows as I move it back, so I'll push it forward along this line until the darkness is abated. Then I'll light this one, and then pull this one back by the same amount. There. So that's about 1, 2.5, almost. So if we stretch this to a half, 1, 2.5, 1, 2.5. That'll make sure they are evenly spaced, and we've got pretty decent light. I'm putting this in the middle. I'm going 1, 2, 3 squares. 1, 2, 3 squares. It straddles the fourth square on either side, and then we basically put it in the middle of that invisible box. You see that? And that's how you can center it there. So I'll just go all the way around. So the 1, 2.5 for this one falls like right against this wall, and we don't want that. So we'll push this one up right there, And then, so 2 of these, and then 2 halves equals 3. So we'll go 1, 2, 3. And then that's the same spacing, so it's equidistant. One, 2, 3. Okay, so this is what I finally got. As you can see, it lights up the floor beautifully. There are just a few shadows when I have these evenly spaced, and I'm okay with that. I can live with that. Really, the only drawback to this strategy is you've got wires. And I had hoped to do a wire-free build. I didn't want to have visible wires. But sadly, these are not area of effect poles. They do require wires to work, and they're the only ones that cast such a huge radius, aside from like fires. Like, I suppose I could put down a campfire, but that really wouldn't work with the aesthetic that we're going for. And it's not too bad. I made sure that the conduits that they're connected to are way above the heads of anybody walking. So you come on in here, you see this beautiful, well-lit, vaulted area, and hopefully you don't even notice the wires. Okay, so I have these nice big hallways connecting all of the different sectors. This is the residential domestic sector, but it turns into this long hallway. So pharmacy exit, guard station 3, northeast sector B residential. To get to northeast sector B, I now am leaving this residential sector. Oh good, my settlers are actually using the beds. And I'm going on this long hallway. So what I'd like to do is, I don't want the hallways to be very brightly lit. I really like these windows and being able to peer out and see a bit of a mist or a haze or some rock. And I also kind of like how dim these hallways are. Also, look at the ceiling. There are these big pipes going along the ceiling of these hallways. So it's not like you can put anything on the ceiling anyway. And so what I want to do is I kind of want to do some understated lighting. And I want it to be colored. So for dangerous sections or working / utility sections, I'll probably use some red lights. But for hallways that simply connect all of the domestic areas of the vault, I want to use a different color. I don't want to use red. I want to use green. I'm going to line it up with that middle divot right there. Ooh, whoa, that is weird. Do I like that? Or is that too weird? Let's take a step back. Oh, yes. I kind of like that. So we're going to have this lit green hallway. Well, let's build it out and see what it looks like. Yeah, that works out well. So I've got this residential area, and then a long hallway connects it to the rest of the facility. I've got these nice green lights. It still lights it up so that you can see, but it's understated. It still feels kind of moody and it's quiet. And then when we leave the hallway and we enter a new domestic area, we burst out with some nice bright white lights that really light up the domestic area. Yeah, I like that a lot. Here's an example of how I did utility lighting. I'm again using the white lights just as a typical guide down the hallways. And here we are in storage with white lights, but you go on up this way towards the reactor and we switch to red lights. Red lights around the corner. You can see the reactor in there, see? And I'll be doing a bigger tour of this in another video. And then red lights in the nuclear material storage facility. So, you know, when it comes to these hallways and storage and so forth, I don't feel like it needs a whole lot of light. I mean, I could have put fluorescent lights in here, but I actually really like how kind of dim and moody it is in here. I think the contrast between big, bright, beautiful, open residential places with a big, bright, beautiful, open atrium, contrasted with a kind of dim, dark, moody utility side of things. I think it works really well. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is my video on lighting. I hope that it was useful. As you saw, I kind of figured things out as I went along, but that's how I ended up doing things. Please subscribe if you found this video useful. If you didn't find it useful, please let me know in the comments below what I can do to make my videos more useful for you so that I can earn your subscription. Stay tuned for my big Vault 88 release. As you can see, I'm almost done. I just have a few more bits and pieces I need to do, and then I can release my big, long-awaited Vault 88 lived-in settlement build. So please stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. I've got a lot coming. Subscribe for more Fallout 4 content like this, and thank you all so very much for watching.